She never wanted a crown, never played the Game of Thrones, but what if Arya Stark became Queen of Westeros? What if fate had taken a different turn? What if, instead of sailing west of Westeros, Arya had been crowned Queen of the Seven Kingdoms? In this alternate history, we explore how Arya could have taken the throne, the enemies she'd face, and whether she'd change Westeros forever or abandon the Iron Throne for the freedom she always craved. Let's start it. How Arya could have ascended the throne. For Arya Stark to take the throne, the course of history would have needed to shift in several dramatic ways. One scenario is that Bran Stark refuses the crown, believing his role as the three-eyed raven to be beyond ruling. In that case, the remaining lords would have had to choose another Stark. Sansa, the most politically skilled of the siblings, could have declined the throne, preferring to remain queen in the north. With Jon Snow in exile, Arya might have been the only Stark left to rule the realm. Another path to the throne could have been through Daenerys Targaryen's assassination. Arya was already in King's Landing during Daenerys' fiery destruction of the city, and she was determined to end the Dragon Queen's reign of terror. If she had reached Daenerys before Jon Snow, Arya might have been the one to take her life, earning the support of those who saw Daenerys as a tyrant. In the power vacuum that followed, Arya, the woman who saved Westeros from the Night King and freed it from a second Mad Queen, could have been nominated as the next ruler. Westeros, exhausted from war, might have been reluctant to trust another Targaryen or Lannister. Arya, with her history of fighting against tyranny, could have been seen as a queen who understood the struggles of common people, unlike the noble houses that had spent centuries treating them as pawns. The queen who never wanted to rule. One of the most compelling aspects of Arya's rule would have been the fact that she never wanted it. Unlike Cersei, Daenerys, and even Jon Snow, Arya had no desire to sit on the Iron Throne. She was a traveler, an explorer, someone who sought freedom, not power. This reluctance could have made her an honest and just ruler, free from the greed and corruption that destroyed so many before her. However, it could also have made governing difficult. Westeros requires a ruler who understands alliances, diplomacy, and the delicate balance of power. If Arya had ruled with disinterest or frustration, the noble houses might have grown resentful, leading to rebellion or political instability. Arya's greatest strength as a warrior might have been her greatest weakness as a queen. While she knew how to fight, she had never led an army. While she understood justice, she was prone to seeking vengeance. These qualities, while admirable on a battlefield, might have made her rule unpredictable and even dangerous. Arya's reign, a new era for Westeros. If Arya had embraced the throne, she would have ruled differently than any monarch before her. She had traveled through the war-torn villages of Westeros, seen the suffering of the small folk firsthand, and lived among the common people as one of them. Unlike previous rulers, she would have been a queen of action, favoring deeds over words. She might have dismantled the old feudal system, taking power away from the noble houses that had spent centuries fighting over the throne. She might have restructured the political system, creating a council of advisors that included commoners, not just lords and ladies. Her experiences as a faceless man assassin would have shaped her rule in ways Westeros had never seen before. Arya had learned how power truly worked not through birthright, but through skill, intelligence, and survival. Under her leadership, Westeros might have become a land where merit mattered more than bloodlines, where rulers were chosen based on ability rather than name. The challenges of Arya's rule. For all her strengths, Arya would have faced significant challenges as queen. The noble houses of Westeros would have been her biggest opposition, viewing her as too unpredictable, too untraditional, and too dangerous to rule. Many lords relied on the feudal system to maintain their power, and Arya's tendency to reject the customs of nobility might have led to rebellions from houses who feared losing their influence. Her rule would have also been tested by external threats. The Iron Islands, Dorne, and what remained of House Targaryen might have refused to acknowledge a Stark warrior queen on the throne, seeing her as a northern outsider who had no claim to rule the south. Without alliances through marriage or political strategy, Arya might have struggled to hold the kingdom together. Her biggest challenge, however, might have been herself. Arya was not built for ruling. She was a wanderer, a fighter, and a woman who longed for adventure. If the crown began to feel like a cage, would she have abandoned it, leaving Westeros in a power struggle once again? The fate of the North under Queen Arya. If Arya had taken the Iron Throne, the North's independence would have remained one of the biggest questions of her reign. Sansa had already declared the North a separate kingdom, and Arya's loyalty to her sister would have made things complicated. Would she have demanded the North bend the knee to her rule, or would she have allowed her homeland to remain independent while she governed the South? It is likely that Arya and Sansa would have worked together, creating a strong alliance between the North and the Seven Kingdoms. This could have led to a more peaceful and cooperative era between the Stark sisters, ensuring stability in both regions. However, some lords of Westeros might have seen this as a sign of Stark dominance, accusing Arya of favoring her family over the realm. Would Arya have married to secure her rule? Marriage had always been a powerful tool in Westeros, securing alliances and uniting rival houses. But Arya, who rejected traditional roles for noble women, would have likely resisted any attempt to marry for political gain. Without a king or consort to strengthen her position, she might have faced more challenges in securing her rule. It is possible that she would have married for love, not power, choosing a warrior or fighter who shared her values. However, refusing to marry at all might have led to uncertainty about her successor, creating a crisis of succession that could have undone all the stability she had built. Would Arya have ruled with mercy or vengeance? One of the defining aspects of Arya Stark's character is her unyielding sense of justice. Throughout her journey, she kept a list of names, vowing revenge against those who had wronged her and her family. If she had taken the Iron Throne, one of the biggest questions would have been how she chose to wield her power as a merciful ruler who sought to heal the realm, or as a queen who delivered swift and brutal justice to those who had wronged the Starks and the people of Westeros. Arya had seen firsthand the corruption of the noble houses, from the Lannisters' betrayal of her father to the Frey's treachery at the Red Wedding. If she carried this anger into her reign, she might have punished the families who had supported these atrocities, possibly executing powerful lords or stripping them of their titles. The Freys were already wiped out by her hand, but what about the Lannister loyalists, the former supporters of House Bolton, or even the lingering Targaryen sympathizers? If Arya ruled with vengeance, her reign could have begun with a bloodbath, ensuring that the great houses of Westeros feared her as much as they respected her. On the other hand, Arya had also learned from her experiences in Braavos and her time among the common folk. She knew that justice and revenge were not always the same thing. If she had chosen a path of mercy, she might have used her reign to reform the system rather than destroy it. Instead of executing traitorous lords, she might have forced them into service, making them prove their loyalty through actions rather than words. Instead of ruling with fear, she might have offered second chances, breaking the cycle of bloodshed that had plagued Westeros for generations. Her rule would have likely balanced harsh justice with fairness, rewarding those who fought for the people and punishing only those who continued to plot against her. Unlike Daenerys, who allowed personal rage to consume her, Arya might have walked the fine line between vengeance and restraint, using her assassin's mind to strike when necessary but rule with clarity and wisdom. Would the Faceless Men have played a role in her rule? One of the most interesting aspects of Arya's history is her training with the Faceless Men, the infamous order of assassins from the House of Black and White. Though she ultimately rejected their full indoctrination, she retained their skills, including the ability to change her face and move unseen. If Arya had ruled Westeros, would she have brought these deadly abilities into her rule? Arya, unlike any ruler before her, had access to a network of spies and assassins unlike anything Westeros had ever seen. While other rulers relied on spymasters like Varys or Littlefinger, Arya could have built a secret force of her own, using the techniques of the Faceless Men to eliminate threats before they could act against her. This would have made her one of the most dangerous rulers in history, capable of ensuring loyalty not just through military strength, but through the ever-present fear that anyone could be watching, anyone could be her. However, this approach could have had dark consequences. If Arya had leaned too heavily on assassination and secrecy, she might have lost the trust of her people, ruling through fear rather than respect. The faceless men operated on the belief that death was a gift, not a weapon of war, and using their skills for political power would have gone against everything they stood for. This could have led to a conflict between Arya and the Order, with the faceless men turning against her for misusing their art. If Arya had balanced these abilities carefully, however, she could have revolutionized how power was maintained in Westeros, creating a new kind of intelligence network that ensured loyalty while protecting the realm from internal threats. Would Arya have created a new line of succession? One of the biggest issues any ruler of Westeros faced was the question of succession. The Iron Throne had always been passed down through bloodlines, leading to endless wars between rival heirs. Arya, who had no interest in marriage or bearing children, might have completely reshaped the way rulers were chosen. Instead of passing the throne to a biological heir, Arya could have created a system where rulers were chosen based on merit rather than lineage. This could have taken the form of an election, similar to how the Night's Watch selected its Lord Commander, or a council that determined the best leader for the realm. Such a system would have broken the cycle of noble family wars, ensuring that only the most capable individuals ruled rather than whoever was simply born into power. However, this idea would have been radical and highly unpopular among the noble houses, who relied on inheritance to maintain their power. If Arya had introduced a non-hereditary monarchy, she would have faced intense opposition, and the great houses might have conspired to overthrow her before she could change the system forever. This question of succession would have been one of the defining struggles of her reign. Would she have been able to break the cycle of dynastic wars, or would she have been forced to play by the same rules as the rulers before her? Would Arya have kept or destroyed the Iron Throne? The Iron Throne was more than just a chair. It was a symbol of conquest, power, and the endless struggle for dominance over Westeros. In the final episode of Game of Thrones, Drogon melted the throne to ash, symbolizing the end of an era. If Arya had ruled, would she have rebuilt it, replaced it, or abolished the idea of a single ruler entirely? Arya, who had spent her life watching the horrors caused by power-hungry monarchs, might have seen the throne itself as the root of Westeros' suffering. Instead of ruling from the Red Keep, she might have established a new seat of power, something less grand but more practical. She might have chosen Winterfell, or even an entirely new capital, to reflect a new age for Westeros. Alternatively, she might have kept the throne but changed how it was used, turning it into a symbol of service rather than absolute power. If Arya had kept the Iron Throne, it would not have been as a queen who hoarded wealth and privilege, but as a protector who ensured that no ruler would ever abuse it again. Would Arya have stayed on the throne or walked away? The biggest question of all remains, would Arya have stayed on the throne, or would she have eventually walked away? Arya was never meant to rule. Her heart was in exploration, adventure, and the unknown. No matter how well she ruled, there might have always been a part of her that longed for freedom, for the chance to sail beyond Westeros and discover new lands. If Arya had been crowned queen, it is likely that, at some point, she would have stepped away from power, leaving Westeros in the hands of a trusted successor. Unlike rulers who clung to power until death, Arya might have chosen her own ending, shaping Westeros into something better before disappearing into the horizon once more. The impact of Arya's rule on the great houses. Arya Stark's reign would have shaken the foundations of noble power in Westeros. Unlike previous rulers who relied on political marriages, noble alliances, and the support of powerful families, Arya would have seen the great houses as a source of corruption and instability. Having suffered at the hands of House Lannister, House Frey, and House Bolton, she had no love for the aristocracy that played the Game of Thrones at the expense of the small folk. House Lannister, once the most powerful house in Westeros, would have been stripped of its influence under Arya's rule. With Cersei dead, Tyrion might have remained in a position of power, acting as an advisor. However, Arya's distrust of him due to his former allegiance to Daenerys could have kept their relationship strained. House Lannister's wealth and resources would no longer have dictated the politics of the realm, as Arya would have broken their financial grip over Westeros. House Baratheon, now ruled by Gendry Baratheon of Storm's End, could have seen a renewed alliance with the crown. Arya and Gendry shared a complicated relationship, and while Arya had no interest in marriage, she might have recognized Gendry as one of the few noble lords she could trust. This could have led to Storm's End becoming one of the strongest allies of the crown, serving as a loyal military force in Arya's war against corruption. House Greyjoy might have posed a significant threat to Arya's rule. The Ironborn, always seeking to break free from the Seven Kingdoms, could have used Arya's unconventional rule as an opportunity to declare independence. Yara Greyjoy, having once pledged loyalty to Daenerys, might have demanded sovereignty over the Iron Islands, testing Arya's ability to maintain control of Westeros without becoming a tyrant herself. House Targaryen's remaining loyalists, still scattered across the realm, could have seen Arya as an illegitimate ruler. Some might have secretly plotted to restore a Targaryen heir to the throne, leading to whispers of rebellion and potential assassination attempts. Given Arya's past as an assassin, she would have been prepared for such betrayals, but they would have forced her to rule with caution, never fully trusting those around her. Would Arya have reshaped the role of women in power? Arya's rise to the Iron Throne would have been a revolutionary moment for Westeros, especially for the role of women in politics. While powerful women had ruled before Cersei Lannister, Daenerys Targaryen, and Sansa Stark, they still operated within a patriarchal system that resisted their leadership. Arya, who never adhered to traditional gender roles, would have likely broken that system entirely, ensuring that women had equal standing in Westerosi politics, warfare, and governance. Instead of forcing noble daughters into political marriages, Arya might have outlawed the practice, allowing women to choose their own paths. She would have encouraged female warriors to rise within the ranks of Westerosi armies, creating a society where women were judged by their abilities, not their bloodline or beauty. One of her biggest challenges would have been convincing the great houses to accept this change. Many of the lords of Westeros would have resisted the idea of women leading armies, governing strongholds, or inheriting titles without marriage. Arya, however, would not have cared for their complaints. She would have imposed these changes by force if necessary. Her rule could have inspired a new generation of women in Westeros, ensuring that no girl was ever told she couldn't be a leader, a warrior, or a queen in her own right. Would Arya have abandoned the throne for the unknown? Arya's restless nature would have made her reign a constant battle between duty and personal desire. Unlike previous rulers who clung to the throne, Arya might have seen the Iron Throne as a burden rather than a prize. Even if she had ruled well, there would always have been a part of her that longed for freedom, for the chance to explore, to discover, to chase the unknown beyond Westeros. The greatest question of Arya's rule would not have been whether she could govern, it would have been whether she would have stayed. Could she have endured years of endless political disputes, betrayals, and the responsibility of ruling millions? Or would she, after ensuring the realm's stability, have passed the crown to a chosen successor and disappeared into the horizon once more? Had she abandoned the throne, Westeros could have been left in yet another power struggle, proving that no ruler, no matter how just or strong, could ever break the cycle of war and ambition. However, if she had chosen a worthy successor who upheld her vision, her rule could have led to a new golden age for Westeros, where power was no longer a curse but a responsibility. Would Arya have strengthened or weakened Westeros? Arya Stark's reign as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms would have been a radical departure from anything Westeros had seen before. The question remains, would her leadership have strengthened the realm, or would it have plunged Westeros into further instability? Arya had no interest in consolidating power for personal gain, which means her rule would have centered on justice and fairness rather than personal ambition. She would have likely redistributed wealth and power to ensure that the great houses could not exploit the small folk, breaking the feudal structure that had ruled Westeros for centuries. This could have led to a more stable and just society, but it also could have created deep resentment among the nobility, leading to possible uprisings and rebellion. The lords of Westeros were used to ruling their lands with unchecked authority, and if Arya had stripped them of that power, she would have made dangerous enemies. Even though she had the skill to strike down those who conspired against her, Westeros is not easily ruled by force alone. On the other hand, Arya's experiences as a warrior and assassin might have made her more effective at eliminating threats before they grew too powerful. Unlike previous rulers who relied on spies and advisors, Arya was her own weapon, meaning she would have been able to identify and neutralize opposition in ways that other monarchs could not. If her reign was defined by swift, targeted strikes against traitors, she might have been feared enough to prevent major rebellions altogether. The long-term success of Arya's rule would have depended on whether she could balance her warriors' instincts with the patience of a ruler. If she had ruled wisely, Westeros could have entered an age of unprecedented peace and prosperity, but if she ruled with unchecked force, she could have gone down in history as the most feared queen to ever sit the Iron Throne. Arya's relationship with House Stark as queen. One of the biggest factors in Arya's potential rule would have been her relationship with House Stark. While she was fiercely loyal to her family, the reality of politics might have put her at odds with her own kin. Sansa, as queen in the north, would have remained an independent ruler, meaning Arya would have had to navigate Westeros without the full backing of her family. While their bond was strong, political tensions could have risen if Arya's rule threatened northern independence or if Sansa disagreed with Arya's leadership style. Bran, the three-eyed raven, would have been another potential source of conflict. As someone who saw all past and future events, his insights could have influenced Arya's decisions, leading to moments where she had to choose between trusting her own instincts and following Bran's cryptic wisdom. If Bran foresaw a dark future for Arya's reign, would she have listened, or would she have defied fate? Jon Snow's absence from Westeros would have also created a void in her support system. Jon had been the one person Arya truly admired, and without him as an advisor or protector, she might have felt more alone in her rule than any other monarch before her. Despite these challenges, Arya's loyalty to House Stark might have ensured peace between the North and the South, preventing another civil war between Westeros and the independent North. If she and Sansa remained allies, the bond between their kingdoms could have been stronger than ever. Would Arya have established a new military order? As a warrior queen, Arya might have completely changed how warfare was conducted in Westeros. Instead of relying on traditional knights and noble armies, she could have created a new elite force, built on the principles of survival, agility, and deadly precision. This force could have been modeled after the Faceless Men, the Unsullied, or the Brotherhood without banners, ensuring that Westeros had a highly skilled, loyal, and independent army that did not rely on noble lords for control. Such a force would have broken the power of the great houses, making rebellions and uprisings far less likely. However, this approach would have also alienated many noble families who saw their military strength as part of their identity. If Arya had stripped them of their private armies and established a centralized military loyal only to the crown, she could have invited civil war before her reign had even begun. At the same time, Arya's rule could have seen the rise of women in combat, allowing female warriors to train and fight alongside men, further breaking gender barriers in Westeros. Given Arya's belief in equality based on merit rather than birth, her reign could have paved the way for a more progressive military and society. The possibility of a council-based government. One of the biggest changes Arya might have brought to Westeros was a shift away from absolute monarchy. Unlike previous rulers who clung to power, Arya might have seen the flaws of one person ruling over an entire continent and worked to implement a council-based government instead. Drawing from her experiences in Braavos, where the Iron Bank and the Faceless Men operated independently of royal authority, Arya could have introduced a system where leadership was shared among a ruling council, ensuring that decisions were made collectively rather than by one ruler alone. Such a system would have been revolutionary, but deeply unpopular among the noble houses, who thrived on inherited power. If Arya had moved Westeros toward a more democratic system, she would have faced immense resistance, possibly leading to assassination attempts and secret plots to overthrow her rule. However, if she had succeeded in creating a fairer system of governance, Arya might have been remembered as the queen who ended the monarchy altogether, reshaping Westeros into a new and more just society. Would Arya have had a successor? One of the biggest challenges of Arya's reign would have been the question of succession. Since Arya had no interest in marriage or children, she would have had to decide who would take the throne after her. Given her dislike for hereditary monarchy, Arya might have abolished the system of birthright succession altogether, choosing instead to appoint a worthy successor based on skill and leadership. If she had established a council, they could have been responsible for electing the next ruler, preventing the cycle of blood feuds and civil wars over succession. However, without a clear plan for succession, Arya's departure from power could have left Westeros vulnerable to internal strife, as noble houses fought for control once again. If she left the throne without a solid system in place, her efforts to bring justice and stability to Westeros might have collapsed after her reign ended. Would Arya's reign have changed Westeros for the better? Arya Stark, if crowned Queen of Westeros, would have completely transformed the Seven Kingdoms. Her rule would have been defined by justice, fairness, and a rejection of the corruption that had plagued the realm for centuries. She would have sought to destroy the feudal system, uplift the common people, and ensure that no single noble house ever held too much power again. However, her reign would have also been unstable, marked by rebellion, distrust, and the constant battle between her warrior instincts and the need for diplomacy. Her aversion to political games could have left her vulnerable to betrayal, and her reluctance to settle in one place might have prevented her from fully committing to the throne. Ultimately, Arya's story was one of freedom and self-discovery. While she would have been a queen unlike any before her, the Iron Throne was never her destiny. Had she ruled, she might have left a legacy that changed Westeros forever, but at the cost of her own happiness and the wanderer's spirit that defined her entire journey. Would Arya have been loved or feared as queen? Arya Stark's reputation as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms would have been unlike any ruler before her. Throughout Westeros, rulers often inspired love, fear, or a mixture of both, but Arya's leadership style would have been so unconventional that the reactions to her reign would have varied dramatically depending on who was judging her. Among the common folk, Arya likely would have been adored. She had lived among them, walked their streets, eaten their food, and fought for their survival. Unlike noble-born queens who viewed the small folk as tools or burdens, Arya understood their struggles firsthand. She might have abolished oppressive taxes, ensured that food and trade were more evenly distributed, and held corrupt lords accountable, winning her the loyalty of the everyday people. However, among the noble houses, Arya might have been seen as a dangerous and unstable ruler. Her refusal to play the Game of Thrones, her rejection of traditional alliances and political marriages, and her unpredictable nature would have made her a constant source of fear for those who thrived on power and manipulation. If she had ruled with justice, but also ruthlessness, executing traitors swiftly and using her skills from the faceless men to keep threats in check, she might have been compared to Maegor the Cruel, a monarch feared by all. If, instead, she ruled with compassion and fairness, her reign could have been more akin to King Jaehaerys, the wise ruler who brought peace and stability to Westeros. The reality is that Arya, unlike other rulers, never desired to be loved or feared. She simply wanted to be free. Her actions as queen would have been dictated not by how she was perceived, but by what she believed to be right, which could have been both a strength and a weakness in the brutal world of Westerosi politics. Would Arya have formed alliances or stood alone? One of the most important aspects of ruling Westeros is alliances. No monarch, no matter how strong, can rule alone. Would Arya have built alliances with other noble houses, or would she have rejected the idea entirely, relying only on herself? Arya's distrust of noble families could have made her hesitant to forge alliances with powerful houses like the Lannisters, Tyrells, or Martells. She had seen firsthand how alliances were built on deception and broken by betrayal, and she might have refused to play along. However, Arya's bond with Gendry Baratheon, Lord of Storm's End, could have been one of her strongest political assets. Though she rejected his proposal in Game of Thrones, she might have forged an alliance with House Baratheon in other ways, ensuring that Gendry remained one of her most trusted allies. The North, under Sansa's rule, would have remained independent, but would Arya and Sansa have remained close allies, or would tensions have grown between them? If Sansa disagreed with Arya's methods, there could have been conflict between Winterfell and King's Landing, creating a cold war between the sisters rather than an open war. Beyond Westeros, Arya might have sought alliances outside the Seven Kingdoms, looking to Braavos, the Iron Bank, or even the remnants of Esso's ruling classes. If she had formed a strong bond with the Free Cities, she could have secured Westeros' financial and military stability in a way that previous rulers had not. However, her independent nature and unwillingness to compromise could have also left her isolated, forcing her to rule without the backing of powerful families or foreign powers. If that happened, she would have had to rely solely on her own strength and the loyalty of the people, a dangerous position in a kingdom built on alliances. Would Arya have changed Westeros' laws and traditions? A ruler's legacy is often defined by the laws they leave behind. If Arya had taken the Iron Throne, would she have reshaped Westerosi law, or would she have focused on enforcing justice through action rather than written rules? One of the first things Arya might have changed is the inheritance laws of noble houses. Westerosi society was deeply patriarchal, where daughters were often overlooked in favor of male heirs. Arya, who had always defied gender roles, might have made inheritance equal between sons and daughters, ensuring that women could inherit titles, lands, and positions of power without marriage or male guardianship. Another change could have been abolishing arranged marriages and forced alliances. Having rejected traditional noble customs her entire life, Arya might have introduced laws allowing noble children to marry for love rather than duty, creating a major shift in how alliances were forged. Beyond noble customs, Arya might have established protections for the small folk, ensuring that lords could no longer abuse their power without consequence. She had witnessed the suffering of common people firsthand, and she might have introduced new laws that held noble lords accountable for crimes against peasants, something no ruler had ever attempted before. While these laws would have made Westeros fairer and more just, they would have angered many noble families who relied on tradition to maintain their power. This could have led to secret conspiracies and rebellion, as many lords would have seen Arya's rule as a threat to the old ways. Would Arya's rule have ended in betrayal? Every ruler in Westeros must face betrayal at some point. No matter how just or fair a ruler is, there will always be those who seek to remove them from power. The question is, would Arya have been overthrown, assassinated, or betrayed by those closest to her? Arya's ability to see through deception would have made it difficult for enemies to plot against her without her knowing. However, even the most skilled warriors cannot see every attack coming. If the great houses had grown tired of her rule, they might have formed a secret alliance to remove her, either by forcing her into exile or having her assassinated by one of her own council members. Alternatively, Arya might have seen betrayal coming before it happened and dealt with it in her own way, eliminating traitors before they could act against her. If she had ruled with a network of spies and assassins loyal only to her, she might have prevented rebellion before it could even begin. However, Arya's own nature might have been her greatest downfall. If she had grown tired of ruling and abandoned the throne, Westeros could have been thrown into chaos once again, proving that even a just and fair ruler could not hold the kingdom together forever. The queen Westeros needed, but not the one it deserved? Arya Stark as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms would have been one of the most revolutionary reigns in Westerosi history. Her rule would have been just, fearless, and focused on the people rather than the nobility, breaking the cycle of corruption and power struggles that had defined the Seven Kingdoms for centuries. However, Arya's reign would have also been unpredictable, unconventional, and at times dangerous. Her refusal to play the Game of Thrones could have led to isolation, rebellion, or even her own downfall. Her nature as a wanderer and warrior would have made her a reluctant queen, and the longer she remained on the throne, the more likely it would have been that she eventually walked away from power. Would Arya have been the queen Westeros needed? Arya Stark, if crowned Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, would have been unlike any ruler before her. She would have reshaped the realm through action rather than words, ruling with fairness but also unshakable strength. She would have dismantled the corruption of noble families, reformed the feudal system, and ensured that justice was no longer dictated by birthright but by merit. However, Arya was never meant for the Iron Throne. She was a warrior, an explorer, and a free spirit. The weight of ruling might have slowly broken her, forcing her to choose between the duty to her people and the call of adventure. If she had stayed on the throne, Westeros would have entered a new era of fairness and equality, but if she had left, she might have doomed the realm to another generation of conflict and power struggles. Either way, one thing is certain: Arya Stark, the girl who never wanted a crown, would have changed Westeros forever. Arya Stark, as Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, would have changed Westeros forever. She would have ruled with justice, action, and a deep understanding of the struggles of common people. Her reign might have brought unprecedented reforms, shaking the foundations of noble power and ensuring that no tyrant could ever again destroy the realm. But she was also a Stark, a wanderer, and a warrior. The question is not just whether Westeros could have handled a queen like Arya, it is whether Arya could have handled a life confined to a throne. The legacy of Queen Arya Stark. If Arya had ruled, her legacy would have been unlike any other monarch in Westerosi history. She might have been remembered as the warrior queen who dismantled the old world, bringing justice to the people and ending noble corruption. Or she might have been seen as a dangerous and reckless ruler, one who disrupted centuries of tradition but struggled to hold the kingdom together. More than any ruler before her, Arya would have ruled with her own code, rather than the expectations placed upon her. She might have transformed Westeros into a land of fairness and equality, or she might have left the throne behind entirely, choosing the open seas over the weight of a crown. One thing is certain: if Arya Stark had taken the Iron Throne, Westeros would never have been the same again.